Okay.
All right, welcome back to another special report from the unknown. My name, Michael Volpe. I live in Chicago. That's in Cook County. And I write at michaelvolpe.substack.com. And my broadcast partner, as always, Richard Lutman. He lives somewhere around Fort Myers, Florida. He doesn't want to tell people exactly where it is, but he does know that it's exactly in Lee County, Florida, which is named after Robert E. Lee. And it's Luthman, Luthmann.substack.com. We're joined by Terri LaPoint. And Terri, you are running for the U.S. Congress, the third district of Alabama. So,
Yes.
first question: what made you run?
Well, I've been fighting for families for a long time. I mean, that's where I've run into you. I've seen connected, intersected with some of the stories of medical kidnapping, investigative journalism, digging into things that I never dreamed were happening.
Mhm.
And so the more I learned, the deeper I got, wrote a book dealing with the trafficking and the foster care system, all these things. I started going to Washington, D.C. to talk to legislators about this. And I was like, so I realized how federal funding is impacting all of this. It's not just a state issue. It's not just in one state or another state. It's in all of our states. And so federal funding is what is the impact. And the more I thought, I went to an Eagle Forum policy day, and they were dealing with all kinds of things happening in Alabama, and it just hit me. Everything they're talking about is federal funding incentivized. We've got to fix it at the federal level. And I've been praying, and just God made it very clear, you need to run, and you need to run for U.S. Congress to make these changes,
All
because
right,
that's where they can't come from the state level. You can only do so much on the state level without fixing it on the federal level.
right now you said federal funding. So, for people who don't understand, what is this federal funding, and how does it work, and why it deleterious? I love that word. Why would you say it's deleterious to the social services foster care system?
So, uh, and this can extrapolate to so many other issues just besides just family issues, family court issues. But when you're talking about the foster care system and child protective services, there are billions and billions of federal dollars that funnel to the states, but the vast majority of that is based on the model of remove the child, place them in foster care with strangers, not with family members, and adopt them out eventually to strangers. That's where the bulk of the money is. And
Mhm.
so there's just a tiny bit of funding that goes to um, keeping families together and preserving the families, services for families if it's a poverty issue or something that's a pretty easy issue to correct, instead of just removing the kids and all these interventions. There are some funds to help families in some situations, but that's just a tiny bit of it. So it needs to go the other way. I strongly
where
believe
the
that.
where the money goes to reunifying the family and keeping the family
Keeping
together.
them together whenever possible.
I don't know if Nancy Schaefer, who died under very mysterious circumstances approximately 2 years after she wrote this in 2008. I know that she popularized the thoughts that you are saying, but she was a Georgia state senator, so she tried
Mm-hmm.
to fix it on the state level. Are you getting it wrong? Was she getting it wrong? Why did she think she could fix CPS as a state legislator, and you feel like you got to run for Congress? Couldn't you run for Alabama state
Well, here's
legislature and
we've
fix
got
it?
we have some really good leaders in Alabama that are starting to understand this. Representative Kenneth Pascal is a hero of mine, and I don't know if you've run across him with the shared parenting issues.
Mhm.
He's got a huge focus on that. More and more of the state leaders are understanding this, and I've been working a lot with leaders across the state to educate them. We've got somebody running for lieutenant governor who is really getting a really good grasp on this.
Mhm.
So I feel like there's a lot that can be done on the state level, but because of my unique position with researching the medical kidnap stories, when I see the same patterns happen in California as Georgia, as in Wisconsin and Arizona and Florida and Ohio, from the most conservative to the most liberal states, and you're seeing this exact same story. That's a federal issue. That's a federal funding issue that's behind it.
All right, I got one last question and I'll swing it to Rich. When you're talking to voters, if a voter looks at you and says, that doesn't interest me, I'm a good parent, I'd never be involved with CPS, that's not something I need to worry about, what would you tell them?
One, I'd say, bless your heart, that's a little naive because frankly, if I had a nickel for every family that I've investigated or helped that said I let them in, I had nothing to worry about. We didn't do anything wrong. I could fund my own campaign that way. So
Mhm.
it's it's a much bigger problem than most people realize, but there's also more to it. We can extrapolate, and there's conservative values, there are family values, parental rights, economics. The economy thrives with strong families. I don't see very much leadership in Washington, D.C., primarily focusing on families. I don't see that there. And we got to have leadership that puts families first. Constitutional values, the things that standing up for integrity and justice and righteousness. And I do that.
All
I've
right,
demonstrated that in my life.
Rich, you got a few questions?
Well, there's the old adage that it's a recession when your neighbor gets laid off, and it's a depression when you do it. Most people don't understand family court unless and until they're in family court, and that becomes the problem.
Right,
None
right,
of us, with the grace of God, go any of us. So I
right.
have some questions that will tie together this federal issue. We have the Title 4D, the Title 4E, the Violence Against Women Act funding. A lot of times it's used to plug state family court budgets, to plug CPS budgets, but they rely on that money. It's almost like there's quotas. There's a number of children, number of families that have to go through the system, so they're insured the federal money. And some of these states are using less than stellar practices. The euphemism.
That's an understatement.
Yes. So, a lot of critics of family courts say that they operate in secrecy by design. If you're elected to Congress, do you believe that Congress should condition federal child welfare funding on transparency measures like recorded hearings, public reporting of judicial decisions, open dockets, and those types of reforms?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because we've had so much of the confidentiality, and the things, it shrouds the evil doing and in this, there's this shroud of secrecy. There's all these backroom deals and all these things that are happening. It's not transparent, and innocent people get caught up in that, and they have no idea until it happens to them or somebody they love, just like you said. So we've got to have more transparency. We are actually, with Family Forward Project, headed by Connie Reguli, attorney out of Tennessee. We've got a bill that has just been introduced in Congress. It was introduced the day of the shutdown by one of my favorite legislators, an Alabama legislator, Representative Barry Moore, and it's called the Advocates for Families Act. And in that, it
I
says
think I
that
think we've got it up, right? HR 5647.
yes, yes, that's
Yeah.
it.
All right. So
Yes.
I explain what this bill does.
So if a state takes Title 4B money, that's the part for the keeping families together, but they all do. Even though it's a smaller amount of money, they all take this money. They all rely on it. So they want it. So it just conditions the receipt of this money by they have to allow a family advocate when
Mhm.
somebody's dealing with family courts, the child protective services system, all that. They don't have to provide it. They don't have to pay for it. We've got a bill that doesn't cost taxpayers any money. And
Mhm.
in fact, it will actually save money because it will it will allow the social workers to focus on the children who really do need intervention, because child abuse really does exist, but less than 16% of the cases that child protective services deals with, less than 16% of the cases in foster care are of any kind of abuse. So so this whole industry, and I call it an industry because it's profit driven industry that uses children as a commodity. It's based on the abuse of children, but that's only a tiny percentage of the children that are actually in the system.
Right. And I want to point out Nancy Schaefer basically used the same language, the corrupt business of CPS. And she said children are commodities, like you said. Um, and it's the incentivizing of the way that Title IV B and E and all those work. I wanted to ask you two questions that play devil's advocate. So you said transparency, but the people who make it non-transparent say, but the child has a right to privacy. It would just be so horrible if the public knew about what all of these problems that the child was dealing with. And so we have to protect the child, and that's why these things have to be in secret. What would you say to that?
I would point to some of the cases where the children were. I mean, we when we published, we had the stories. The parents talked to us. We had the children's pictures in there, and it brought attention to what was really going on. And these kids that were returned home are thankful. They are
Mhm.
very thankful that they get to be with their parents. They get restored. Um, you know, it doesn't mean that they have to have, the Fox News and CNN and all of that, the cameras in there, but they can have some transparency. They can have advocates, they can have people that the parents know and love and trust that would come and be there. Even a few eyes is better than what we have now. Right
Right.
now, everybody sits in the hallway while Susie's over there, her life is being destroyed. Sam is crying out for his children, and everything is being ripped from them, and nobody's there with them except for the lawyer, who's usually a court appointed pretender, many times, who's not really fighting for them. I mean, a good lawyer is very expensive, and a lot of the lawyers don't really truly fight for these families. So this whole process is so non-transparent, and
Right.
kids are being destroyed because ideally, what every child needs and wants is a mom and dad who love them and are there for them. That's what
Right.
every child needs. Not all of us got it.
Right.
I didn't get it. So
Right.
that's part of my motivation, I think, that draws me into this, is to fight for those kids that have
Uh,
parents that love them and are fighting for them.
the second question is about that HR 5647. When it was introduced to me, the person that introduced it, I said, this is okay, but you really need to transform Title 4B, D, and E so that the incentive isn't to take the kids away. And that person said, I agree, but that was something that was impossible to get anyone in Congress to back. Is that right? And what's the
We worked
problem
very
there?
hard on working on CAPTA reform, because when it was being reauthorized, and it just became this. We found out later that the reason that there were some bills that were being presented that had some good things in them, even some language that we had talked about. It had some good provisions, and it was going further. It was a correction to some degree. It wasn't going to fix it completely, but then it got tied up behind legislative arguments and left and right divide. And I, what I was actually ultimately told was the left wasn't giving in because they wanted the right to be able to place kids with the LGBT QRST community, and they wanted the right to transgender the kids. They wanted all that in there, and the right said no. And we
Mhm.
found out that President
So
Biden
that's,
had that funding. Yeah, that's we were told that ultimately that's what it really came down to.
but that's what like killed reforming Title 4E, which incentive basically. I spoke to Connie many years ago about this. She said the pot is much bigger in the placement and the adoption, than it is in the reunification. So all of these states want to place and
Significantly more.
adopt because that's where the money is. But
Yes.
you're saying a fight over whether or not LGBTQ can be the adoptive and foster parent killed transforming and reforming Title
And
4E.
the transgender, that whole transgender
Right.
issue, it was huge
All
in
right.
Congress.
I cut Rich off. He had like 25 other questions and I cut him off very rudely. So ask your questions.
Let's make a point first. There's a simple solution to that, and that's what Giorgia Meloni just did in Italy, and they're working to outlaw same-sex adoptions. But that's a story for another day. A lot of parents that I speak to, and that Mike speaks to, allege retaliation when they expose misconduct, especially by CPS workers, court-appointed evaluators, guardians ad litem. Do you support federal whistleblower protections for parents facing retaliation from state actors?
I think that is an excellent, that would be an excellent provision because I even wrote an article about the guardianship, which is, it ties in, it's similar. The guardianship and of elders and disabled, it's the same kinds of things happening in the probate courts that we see in the family courts and juvenile courts.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's I got to the point where I was telling people about wanting to go public with their story. They'd say, "Do you think there's going to be retaliation?" I said, "Yes, there's going to be. They will. It's not we think it may. It's the pattern is we're going to see they're going to retaliate. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to weigh, is the risk of going public and having some retaliation versus what you've been going through and you're not getting anywhere, you're not getting your kids back, they're terminating your parental rights because you've stayed silent, you've done everything they've told you to do and you haven't talked about it, you've been a good little model parent doing everything, jumping through every hoop and all the increasing hoops because they add more and more and more when you do those because there's more money with it. You've got to weigh it out. What's the risk? And many times families have found that it is worth the risk just to go on and go public. Some families have said if we hadn't told our story, we would have never gotten our kids back. So, but then again, there's been retaliation. Sometimes they get visitation cut off. Some parents don't get their kids back, and they always wonder, is it because I went public? So that was why I said, I'm not making that decision for you. You
Right.
have to decide if it's worth the risk.
You
But
can
I would
never.
love to protect them. Let's have the whistleblower protection. I'm down with that. Let's have a bill.
You can never predict what media does, but almost always it helps many more times than it hurts.
I agree.
Rich, go
So
ahead.
another question about another big issue in this area, reunification therapy. Reunification therapy, forced reunification, particularly the kidnapping camps, have come under national scrutiny. I know that Paris Hilton got a bill passed last year. Do you believe that Congress should regulate these forced reunification programs and or defund states that use them in abusive ways?
So when you're talking, I need to learn more about this, the forced reunification programs. What I mean,
Well,
reunification.
I'll tell you, there's family therapy, which I don't think anybody has a problem with.
Right.
But then it goes down the spectrum to reunification therapy, where they force children into a room with someone who is an alleged abuser, to the point where the court will order that type of activity to happen, or even in the most extreme circumstances, order that a consultant can come in, basically kidnap the children, take them away to a place where the allegedly abusive parent is with them for 72 hours and force them to be there. And these types of situations are pretty heinous. The UN has called this torture. We have bills in Congress where it's torture. I know Paris Hilton had this type of thing happen to her when she was younger, these scared straight type camps where they kidnap the kids and they bring them. And that's outlawed in Congress last year. It was actually signed by Biden on the way out. But is this something that you would look into in Congress, this type of reunification therapy on the most extreme end, where they kidnap children against their will by court order from state court, family court judges?
Yeah, when all of these bills and stuff, when we're talking about, we're fighting for the innocent families. We're fighting for families who really are not abusive. So there are truly abusive parents, and those need to be investigated. Child abuse is a crime. It's a criminal thing, and you shouldn't be forced to be with somebody who's molested you or beaten the heck out of you. And if you are in that case, you need to have somebody there to protect you, some kind of supervision. I mean, that's just common sense. That's logical. Why would you? I've never understood, but I do now with more. That when they put the kid, if there's an abusive person, they put them with the abuser instead of the one who's fighting and exposing the abuse. And I know that can be used by innocent against innocent parents. So we've got to do a better job there. But it tends to be, what I've seen is kids in a custody battle, the judges tend to put them with the abusive person, or the one who is alleged to be abusive, rather than the other one. And I think it has to do with all the money, keeping the money flowing, the lawyers and all that, because the
the
big
case
parent's never going to
never
stop fighting.
right, the case then never ends, and you can
Right.
appoint a bunch of people. The lawyers get money, all the appointees, and it never
Yeah.
stops. If you put them with the right parents, then it'll stop. It not right away, but it will stop. It's the money. Terri, can you run on Congress with this kind of a narrow scope, or do you have to talk to people about other issues like taxes, healthcare, or illegal immigration? Can you make a connection with enough people just talking about well, I mean, everybody has a family, but
Well,
CPS and
right.
these
We
issues.
all do. So that's my primary focus, but everything else connects with it. But medical freedom, I've been an advocate for medical freedom long before I knew medical kidnapping even existed.
Mhm.
The right to make a decision for your child, your loved one, without fear of them being taken away, of course.
Mhm.
But then the right to maybe say refuse a certain shot and not lose your job.
Mhm.
Just medical freedom that appeals to a broad range of people. I live in the part of Alabama that I live in is very heavily military and veterans. Well, of course, I've been fighting for veterans for a long time. I've got my dad's flag, my grandfather's flag, my great uncle's flag. My father-in-law served in World War II. I've got all kinds of relatives who are veterans, and I'm seeing where they're being overlooked with, and really having to fight really hard just to get their disability. I had a guy tell me it was 3 times he had to file his paperwork with the VA to get his veterans benefits. They lost him every time. Okay, that's crazy. We've got to do a better job serving our veterans. But then I can also point out that I've seen veterans targeted by the family court system, child
Mhm.
protective services. They literally use their service to their country. They're fighting and risking everything for us, for America, and they use that against them to keep their family separated.
And
That's
cops
disgusting.
and
That's appalling. The
right
suicide rate among veterans, most of the time, it's connected with the family court issue. Nobody's talking about that. I am.
all right, Rich.
So
Few
there's other
questions.
issues as well.
Rich, you got a few questions?
You're challenging an entrenched incumbent in Alabama's third district. What's
Mhm.
the single most important issue you believe Washington is getting wrong, and how can you fix it?
The single most important issue that we're getting wrong is we're not standing up for families. Everybody has this faith family stuff in their slogan, and they all mention it, they give lip service, but nobody's truly fighting for our families.
Mhm.
We've got people that are fighting for the big corporate interests and the big lobbyists and all the big names, but the man on the street, the just normal person that we run into every day, who's fighting for the little guy? I fight for the little guy. It's what I've always done.
All right. Now, this is your opponent, but he says Mike Rogers is a sixth generation East Alabamian. Hopefully, I got that
Mm-hmm.
right. He is a conservative, a Christian, the father of three, and married to his wife, Beth, for over 35 years. He grew up in Calhoun County Alabama, in the small mill village of Blue Mountain. His mother worked in the local textile mill, and his father was a firefighter. Mike learned the values of family, hard work, and the sacrifice from his parents. Well, what's he doing wrong? Well, why should you replace him?
He
I'll tell
is.
you what, Mike, that looks like a hell of a rug. That's what he's doing wrong first and
All
foremost.
right, all right. Well, go ahead.
I'm not going to
Why
go
should you?
there. Bless his heart. I'm not. Oh, bless his heart. Um, a lot of people do go there.
I'm sorry, I derailed you with that one.
It derailed me.
Uh,
Um, okay, so Alabama is probably one of the most, well, no, we're one of the most conservative states. We
mhm,
are a very conservative district. Out of all of Alabama's legislators, congresspeople, and senators in Washington, D.C., Mike Rogers' record shows that he is the least conservative
mhm,
of all of ours. I'm a true conservative. I don't just give lip service to it, I live it
mhm,
every day. I fight, and I've worked with the Republican women. Our club just got the. I'm the president of a local Republican women club. We got the most outstanding small club in the state of Alabama.
mhm.
A Republican club. I fought for parental rights. I fought and worked on legislation, a lot of legislation that is for families and for things that conservatives values. So I do that every day.
But he doesn't.
So,
He's the military guy. He's that's all we ever hear. So and you can't say that I won't support the military, because I absolutely will. The our veterans, I will take care of our veterans, but these endless wars, nobody likes that.
Mhm.
um
All right, Rich, you got a few more?
Terry, you're running as a grassroots conservative, and you just
mhm.
talked about, sometimes people go to Washington and get bad because they go bad. How do you ensure your campaign and your potential service avoids the trap that many challengers fall into? You become co-opted by the DC interests that you're campaigning against. What's going to happen, when the lobbyists show up with their briefcases full of cash for you?
you know i I'm married to a firefighter. We don't have a lot, but I don't need a lot. What I want to do is make a difference for people. That's why I exist. That's how I thrive, is making a difference for people. My first team to come together with my campaign was the prayer team. We pray all the time, and I've got people. I mean, I don't ever want to fall into that trap, but I'm not so arrogant as to say that it couldn't happen, because I mean, me now, there's no way, I cannot possibly envision that. But the people around me, I've told them, if you ever see that happen, snatch me up ball headed. I need out of there. I don't ever want to do that, ever.
Mhm.
So
Anything else, Rich?
Okay. Yeah, Alabama, like all places, especially military, heavy places, are deeply affected by federal economic policies and changes, probably more so than other places. What's your specific plan to curb inflation, protect middle class families, create affordability, and reduce the regulatory burdens on local businesses?
well, those things need to happen. One of the things that we could do that would be a pretty simple thing would be, let's and I think that Congress, if should be able to have the authority to have some influence to bring down the interest rate on credit cards. The living paycheck to paycheck, and you got credit cards that are 30% and 35% interest rate. That's killing the middle class, because we've had the economic, you have economic struggles, you put things on credit card, you're okay, it's going to get better, and you put things on credit card, and then now they've jacked everything up to 35% interest rate. You work really hard, you're never going to get out of that. If we can do that single thing and just bring it down to 10-12% and put a cap on it, that would make a massive difference for the middle class.
All right, let me
Yeah.
challenge you on that. What I hate to be pro credit card, but what the credit cards would say is these are unsecured loans. And if you cap the amount of default on these loans that we have very little in the way of collecting, uh, we'd go out of business if we could only charge 12%. So
Maybe they
how
need
do
to be
you,
a little more selective about who they give them to. Make sure you have a job when
Mhm.
you get the credit card.
Rich, any other questions?
Like in that business, like even if you lower it to 20% cap, like you have, it's usurious for a consumer credit card debt. A lot of these numbers, 35%, that's usury. Plain and simple. Even if you limit it to 20%, you still have credit card companies giving out loans, knowing that they won't collect on 50% of them, and they write them off. They already
Right.
get their benefit writing off the bad debts against the debts that they collect. So they're making money hand over fist. Even if you
I,
take it down from 35% to 20%, they're making money hand over fist. And I think
I
Terry's 100%
20,
right.
20% I could get behind, but 12% I think is way too low for them.
And that maybe that's where
Right,
you have the negotiation
right,
between
right,
Congress people.
right.
Let's
All right.
let's bring it down to something that is much more manageable.
Terry,
But
are you MAGA? Are you conservative? Do you not like a label? If you're describing your political philosophy, how would you describe it?
conservative, biblical, um, I have a friend who deals with the Frederick Douglass Republicans, and
Mhm,
he had pointed out that in many people's minds, conservative says one thing that I don't see it as, that they
mhm,
see it as being more racist and all this, and that's like, please don't. That's not it. So he talks about the Frederick Douglass Republican. If you know anything about him historically, like, yes, I can sign on that. I'm a constitutional
mhm.
conservative. Maybe, let's put it that way.
Are you a Trump loyalist? Are you going to go into Congress to rubber stamp any of his policies? We interviewed
Rubber
Jake Lang, and
stamping. No,
he
I don't.
proudly said that.
I don't
Go
like rubber stamping.
Mhm.
I want to be
Right.
part of the conversation. I love President Trump. I really do. I've campaigned for him. I've knocked on doors for him in Florida. I knocked on
Mhm,
doors for him in Georgia.
mhm.
I do support him, and I do believe that he's got some great ideas. But some of the stuff that we're talking about today with family court, medical kidnap stuff, I don't think is even on his radar. I don't think he
No,
knows about.
right.
So I want to be part of that conversation. As a congresswoman, I'm much better positioned to have those conversations and bring some education, bring some information there. So I don't, you don't go to a church and say I believe everything the preacher says. You examine for yourself and you find out, okay, is this right? Is this, and so yes, I support President Trump. I love President Trump. I pray for him, but he's a man. He doesn't, I mean, nobody gets it right all the time. So let's have a
We-
discussion. Let's have a civil discussion.
Maybe we can get you in touch with Jake so he can see the light. Rich, you've got a few more?
What role do you see President Trump playing in 2026, shaping the next Congress?
Well, we need people. I think that we need people that were going to back the good policies that he's done. And there's some great executive orders that he's done. We need people in Congress that are going to um, put those into law. Because if any executive order can just be undone with the
Right.
stroke of the next president's pen, so we need people who are going to support those good policies. I think that the whole MAGA thing, there's a lot of growing pains. There's a lot of conflict going on. But anytime something good is happening, you're gonna have the conflict. You're gonna have things that you have to work through. And I think that that the whole our country is in a place where the division is happening, yes, but we've got opportunity for some good discussions. We've got opportunity to connect with people that don't necessarily think like we do, and we need to use those opportunities for showing love, compassion, and firmness.
Another thing you should tell Jake about. Go ahead,
So
Rich.
we're heading into Thanksgiving, and forever, Thanksgiving has been about food and family and fun and faith and a lot of different things. But now the new F word is the F word. People are telling their own family members, get out because of politics. You're not coming to my Thanksgiving table because you supported this one, you voted for that one, you said this, you did that. Our country is bitterly divided politically. What do you think is the single biggest political or cultural force driving that divide? And how should leaders respond conservative leaders respond without compromising core values?
Um, that's a really good question. So the divide has been, I feel like, in a way, artificially manipulated by forces. I would say the deep state, by media propaganda, that has really pushed a divide. Because you see the regular people on the street, we can usually disagree without coming to blows, or without that being so hateful. So I think we need to remember that there's a biblical principle: love covers a multitude of sins. Just loving each other and remembering, you know what? We don't have to agree for me to still care about you as a person. We can still be decent. We can still respect. I can respect you. I can honor you, even if you have completely different values than I have. I'm not changing my core values to make you happy. I'm not going to do it. Sometimes you've got to stand firm. There's some parents have had to say, no, well, I'm going to stand firm. No, I'm not going to get this vaccine to make you happy. I'm standing firm. I still love you. And maybe they back off, but then eventually you remember that you love each other. And that's, parenting. You do that with your kids. Like, they fight, they're knockdown blowouts and dragouts. And you're like, okay, this is your brother. Remember, you love him. Let's maybe change the topic a little bit, and or maybe we work it out. Maybe you go to your separate rooms, and we'll come back and have a discussion when you calm down.
Rich,
Maybe we need to. Maybe Congress needs a mama to be in there. Okay, boys, y'all just need to separate just for a little while. Let's come back together when y'all can talk like mature adults.
Rich?
There is almost a biblical command to kind of embrace those that you don't agree with a lot of the time. Those
Absolutely.
that 30-40% of the time, almost like the prodigal son. You bring them along. Once they finally see the light, it's a joyous time. So we usually do this when we have people we interview. We're going to let you ask a question of yourself and then answer that question. Would you like to do that?
Not had that happen before. Ask a question.
Anything else that we missed?
I have a good one. If you don't kick off, then I have a good one. Why should people read your book?
Why? Oh, that's a good one. Because it's won an award. It's a fast moving, like a crime thriller, but it's all true. And people need to be aware that this stuff is happening. This isn't a one-off. This is something. These are things that happen. Voices That Will Not Be Silenced is the book. It's a story of one family in Arkansas who had their child taken that should never have been taken. And then it covers the murder of a state senator, who was about to expose everything that they had learned.
What is that state senator's name?
Linda Collins Smith.
Yeah.
By the time she died, she was Linda Collins.
And I do think I spoke with her shortly before she died.
She was amazing. I wish I'd met her. Absolutely amazing. And the book covers a lot that the media never covered. There were a couple of documentaries on her and her murder. They didn't get into what she was truly passionate about. There's a lot of her writings that I've preserved. I've listened to every single thing she spoke about.
What's the name? What's the name of the book?
Voices That Will Not Be Silenced.
All right, let's see if I find it. Voices That Will Not Be Silent. I wanted to ask you one last question. You said you were a conservative. The most important thing for me is being fiscally conservative. We got a debt that's going to cross $40 trillion in a few months. What kind of a budget would you support in Congress? Is there a way that we can get to where we were when Bill Clinton was president and we were balancing budgets, even paying down the debt? Is that possible? Or I know in Alabama, every single state, they somehow manage to balance their budgets, but the U.S. government doesn't. What sort of a budget would you want to support?
If we'd stop paying Social Security money to traffic children, that would be a big start. So we need to learn to live within our means. yes, there can be a crisis and you need to borrow from tomorrow occasionally, but that shouldn't be the standard practice.
Mhm.
Departments need to rein in. And I don't know how some people are not going to agree if they about the border security, but and illegals, but we're seeing where every agency is paying a ton of taxpayer money to fund people who are not here legally.
Mhm.
That
That,
right there would take out a whole lot. Education, Medicaid, WIC.
right. We
I
we
used to
we
work
have
for
a
the health.
Department of Treasury, Commerce, and Labor, and I can't believe we need all three of them. I think there's a lot of overlap with there's a million places. You're right about illegal
Mhm.
immigrants. However, that that doesn't fix the budget. That fixes one small part of the budget. Also, we spend over $1 trillion on defense. Uh, we should be spending a lot less on defense as well. We're defending the entire world, and
Well,
we
and
don't have
getting
the money
other
for that.
countries to pay for their own defense would
Right.
Right,
help, would
right,
be
Less
significant.
like the other guy's got to pay up. That's what, and
right,
Trump did a great job of that. Come on.
right,
He's doing great. He is doing great
right.
with that.
Listen, there's a lot of things I don't like about Trump, but his push to tell NATO that it's in your charter that you're supposed to spend at least 3%. He was the first one to say it, and he was right. It's in the charter, and so that will help our defense, our budget, because a lot of these countries were getting a free ride off of us. But
Mhm.
there's a lot of different problems with the budget. But Trump has
There are.
contributed. Trump has contributed to that. All right, there's no other way to say it. His budgets or deficits are near $2 trillion. I can't support that, and I have a hard time supporting anyone who would support that. Any other last words you wanted to add?
Yeah.
Well, Terry,
So,
give us your elevator pitch for 30-second elevator pitch for why people should elect you to Congress.
okay, when I meet people, I tell them, look, I'm not a politician. Uh, I've been fighting for families for a long time. We don't have enough voices in Washington D.C. that are really fighting for families, fighting for everyday people, just like you and me. Um, that's what I do. God, families, freedom. That's the point. And that's not just a slogan for me. That is the core of who I am. And I will fight for you, and I will listen, and we will find solutions together.
All right, Terri LaPoint, thank you for being here.